Palestine, a total of 45 patients from the Han Yunis hospital in the Gaza Strip were evacuated outside the Strip in order to receive medical treatment in the United Arab Emirates. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have taken a further step in their offensive against women's rights by announcing the closure of all non-governmental organizations employing women. And the Caribbean community, CARICOM, reiterated its support for Haiti, affirming that it will continue working to strengthen its national institutions and congratulating the country on the 221st anniversary of its independence. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Palestine, a total of 45 patients from the Han Yunis hospital in the Gaza Strip were evacuated outside the Strip in order to receive medical treatment in the United Arab Emirates. The Palestinian Ministry of Health currently claims that several thousand people in Gaza are in need of medical treatment abroad as the health crisis in the region continues to worsen. The United Nations asserts that the situation has reached this point due to the constant and permanent attacks by the Israeli government on the Palestinian territory, which have severely weakened country's infrastructure in various spheres, such as medicine and public health care, and have forced the country to close most of its hospitals, while those that remain in operation are only partially functioning and facing a myriad of shortcomings. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have taken a further step in their offensive against women's rights by announcing the closure of all non-governmental organizations employing women. The move, which comes on top of a previous ban on hiring Afghan women workers for alleged hijab violations, reflects a systematic pattern of repression since the regime took power in August 2021. The regime's Ministry of Economy has warned that any NGO that fails to comply with this new order will face revocation of its license to operate in the country. The UN has expressed its deep concern, stressing that these restrictions not only affect women, but also exacerbate the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, where millions are dependent on humanitarian assistance. And on Wednesday, South Korean authorities confirmed the identification of all 179 victims of the Jeju airplane crash. The Ministry of Health and Welfare of the Asian nations said that the 5 remaining unidentified victims had been recognized in the last few hours. In this regard, they specified that 2 forensic doctors 4 days to single out all the victims due to the conditions of the bodies as a result of the powerful explosion. The Jeju Air Flight 2216, which had taken off from Bangkok, Thailand on December 29, 2024, was carrying a total of 175 passengers and 6 crew members when it touched ground, its landing gear down, and crashed into a wall outside the runway at Muan Airport in Southwest Korea, leaving only 2 survivors. Italian authorities report that at least 20 migrants are missing after a boat shipwrecked off the island of Lampedusa. The Coast Guard said that chances of rescuing the missing people alive are very slim due to weather conditions. The first reports from the authorities showed that the boat left from Libya heading for Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. Migrants were originally from Egypt, Syria, and Sudan. The Interior Ministry reported that to date Italy has received about 66,000 migrants on boats coming from North Africa. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Caribbean community, CARICOM, reiterated its support for Haiti, affirming that it will continue working to strengthen its national institutions and congratulating the country on the 221st anniversary of its independence. This is why CARICOM Secretary General Carla Barnett expressed solidarity with the Haitian people and the community's willingness to collaborate with the Caribbean nation. In this regard, Barnett highlighted CARICOM's objective to help Haiti move forward in the search for peace, security, and social progress. In addition, the Secretary General congratulated the Haitian people on 221 years of independence, saying the date is a source of pride and celebration due to Haitians' indomitable resilience, who persevere despite facing multiple challenges. Mexico lost the dispute panel with the United States and Canada 2023 over the decree issued by former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, which prohibits the commercialization of genetically modified corn for human consumption. Antonio Aranda has details.
President Claudia Sheinbaum informed that Mexico will continue to defend native corn after losing the dispute panel with the United States and Canada over the ban on the importation of transgenic corn for human consumption.
Mexico is intrinsically linked culturally by our origin, by what our native peoples of yesterday and today are, and the resistance with corn. Corn is Mexico. That is why it is said that without corn there is no country. So protecting Mexico from planting transgenic corn is fundamental. There are already decrees, but now we want to take it to the Constitution and make it very clear that in Mexico it is forbidden to plant transgenic corn.
Claudia Sheinbaum explained that one of her government's objectives is to guarantee self-sufficiency in corn for human consumption, taking care of corn biodiversity.
We are impressed by what is most important for Mexico. Even though we evidently believe that it has health effects and that this must be decreased, but the part that is fundamental to protect is the seeding of corn in Mexico.
Mexico is the cradle of corn domestication, which is why it is important to take care of the original genetic biodiversity, says this specialist.
The Creole corn that is grown mainly in southeastern Mexico only has yields of 1 to 5 tons per hectare. That is why Mexico defends from 2020, when the decree published by President López Obrador came out, that the decree was more to prohibit glyphosate. But there was also a section that did not allow the importation of genetically modified corn.
One consequence of banning the importation and planting of transgenic corn for human consumption could be the implementation of countervailing duties against Mexico. However, with the constitutional reform for the protection of white corn, Mexico can avoid the sanction.
The government has established through President Sheinbaum and the Secretary of Agriculture that in February a constitutional law initiative will be in the Chamber of Deputies where the planting of genetically modified corn is prohibited, which does not contravene the treaty with the United States and Canada, but is a power of Mexico.
In addition to the constitutional reform to protect native corn, Sheinbaum's government will promote agricultural production programs, provide free fertilizers, and increase the creation of small and medium corn, bean, and tomato producers, among other products. This also seeks to advance self-sufficiency in white corn, of which each Mexican consumes an average of 196 kilograms per year.
Antonio Aranda, teleSUR, Ciudad de México.
As 2024 came to a close, several presidents of Latin America and the Caribbean bid farewell to the year by taking stock and announcing the most important projects for 2025. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, President Petro, and Nicaragua's Vice President Rosario Murillo sent messages to their respective peoples. Mexican President stressed that the changes initiated by the Fourth Transformation will not take a step back. President Gustavo Petro referred to his achievements, highlighting that 2.5 million people came out of poverty in his country. For her part, the Nicaraguan Vice President shared the joint message of President Daniel Ortega, assuring that they concluded a year of commitment to peace. In Ecuador, relatives of the 4 children abducted by the military hold President Daniel Noboa responsible for their death. The Attorney General's office confirmed that the human remains found in the coastal region belong to the children. After 21 days of national commotion, the suspicions of many were proved right despite the government's covering attempts. Precisely, graphic evidence and witnesses were constantly dismissed by the head of state, the defense minister, and the entire military high command, which referred to the serious crime as an incident. Furthermore, their relatives addressed President Noboa's decision to name the children national heroes, stressing it was made because he knew they were already dead. And with the passing of time, outrage in Ecuador grows. After more than 11 hours, the Interior and Defense Ministry spoke about the crime that killed a promising youth football player, his brother, and two friends, one of them only 11 years old. After criminalizing them and their families, pointing to organized crime and questioning the responsibility of the parents, they were also late with the official statement. It's worth mentioning that none of them apologized. President Daniel Noboa still does not mention them. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Peruvian Congress is preparing regulations to prevent large companies from paying taxes. According to some estimates, it is calculated that the state would stop collecting about $7 billion in taxes that could be used to benefit education and public health of the majority. Let's see.
Peru is one of the countries that collects the least taxes in Latin America. However, the Congress is preparing a series of measures to exempt large companies from paying taxes.
A las grandes empresas.
All these incentives and privileges that are being granted will affect even more the collection. It will be difficult for Peru to reduce its fiscal deficit. Next year, there will only be a temporary reduction. But from 2026, we will resume increasing deficit rates, and that will undoubtedly affect the credit risk rating that our country has.
The beneficiaries would be the agro-exporters, hotels and restaurants, and according to the Ministry of Economy, it is estimated that in 10 years they would stop paying the state 26 billion soles, that is about $7 billion.
Es decir, cerca de $7,000 millones.
In Peru, more than 70% do not have property titles, and this does not allow small agriculture to develop, so this is also a shortcoming of the government and the regional governments that have to give them their property titles so that they can be subject to credit, and there are many issues that the state has abandoned this sector. There are many gaps to close. For example, the issue of communication, both the opening of roads, basic services. In the jungle and in the Andean zone, it suffers a lot, unlike the coast that has greater benefits because there is the agro-export.
In this context, the most discredited Congress in Peruvian history has quintupled its budget for 2025, increasing it from 282 million soles to 12 million soles, an approximate of $380 million.
De $380 millones.
¿Quiénes son los que se benefician? Son empresas, son el grupo.
Who are the ones who benefit? The companies, the Gloria Group, the Romero Group, and other economic groups who are the ones who benefit and have the land again. And the agrarian reform of the 1960s has simply ceased to exist in our country because the land is once again in the hands of a few and they are benefiting at the expense of the exploitation of the agricultural workers.
De la explotación que vienen haciendo los trabajadores agrícolas.
El Perú termina el año con
Peru ends the year with a fiscal deficit of 4% of gross domestic product, failing for the second consecutive year to meet the fiscal target of 2.8% of GDP, spending more than it collects and giving tax advantages to those who have the most.
tributarias para los que más tienen.
Certain sectors have been growing significantly, and instead of charging them more, they are being charged less. Therefore, a tax reform is key, and it is not about spending less, but about spending well and having more resources to spend as a country. The tax pressure in the country is very low, 14%. It has dropped 2 percentage points in the last 2 years and is below the Latin American standard, let alone the standard of the developed world, such as the OECD countries where the tax pressure is around 30% of GDP. We are below half of that.
Para los especialistas consultados,
For the specialists consulted, there is little hope that the government will comply with these norms in case they are approved, since the executive has been acting in complicity with the Congress in favor of the power groups and to the detriment of the great majorities.
mayorías. Desde Lima para TeleSUR, Ramiro Angulo.
And in Argentina, among the many attacks by President Javier Milei on everything related to art and culture, cinema is perhaps the most damaged. Our correspondent Fabián Restivo with the details.
Este es el director de cine argentino.
This is Argentine film director Adrián Jaime. teleSUR spoke to him to find out how things are going in the audiovisual world, one of the sectors under attack by the government of Javier Milei.
Se vuelve difícil.
It becomes difficult to counter everything because you are not on equal footing for the fight.
Para la pelea.
Sus películas recuperan, entre
His films recover, among other things, the memories of the popular struggles in Argentina, which makes Adrián Jaime one of the government's main targets.
Del gobierno.
Y Adorni nos nombró básicamente como...
Adorni accused of having received $15,000 to make a documentary film, which is not true. Our film is called Born Then. It is about the Cordobazo. We reconstruct those 2 historic days with the pure archive material. We did all the sound. We were working on the sound during the whole pandemic. Less and less is being filmed. This year, 5 films were filmed via the National Institute of Cinema and Audiovisuals, out of the usual 200.
De 200 que habitualmente hay.
Pero además el gobierno argentino.
The Argentinian government has also established a series of prohibitions for filming. You can talk about Perón, nor about the achievements of Kirchnerism, nor film with, for example, the popular singer Lali.
Es que es la batalla cultural. Una batalla que no está perdida.
There is a cultural battle, a battle that is not lost but is never settled. I don't believe that the 600,000 jobs that this industry generates, 600,000 direct jobs, plus another 400,000 indirect jobs, an important portion of the GDP, where jobs are generated not only for those who are in the front of the cameras, such as actors or directors, but for everything that is part of the audiovisual ecosystems.
Aquellos que están delante de las cámaras, los directores, los actores, sino para todo aquello que es parte del ecosistema audiovisual, los hoteles, la logística.
Hotels, logistics, carpenters, electricians. All of that at some point, due to the systematic attacks that have been taking place, is surely going to emerge as a second criticism.
Que viene habiendo, seguramente va a emerger como una profunda crítica.
La preocupación del
The director's concern is not only cinema, of course.
La industria cinematográfica argentina.
Argentina's film industry is going to be diminished. Today, we are in a process of resistance and of seeing how it can be sustained.
Apalancar lo que
We are trying to leverage what they are trying to destroy or what they have broken. International entities, the most diverse in Latin America, Europe, and Asia, have declared themselves in favor of sustaining, as Leonardo Sbaraglia said, not only Argentina cinema, but sustaining Argentina.
De también sostener la Argentina.
Desde Buenos Aires para TeleSUR, Fabián Restivo.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.